Okay. Our last topic of the partial is David Hume and the Passions, as you already know. Well, let's see. Try to imagine or remember a significant moment for you, okay? I used to use this example in the class and you start to laugh and that kind of stuff. And I'm going to still use that, because I think it's illustrative. So, remember your first kiss, or how it would be to kiss someone for the very first time. Okay, so in this case, in these perceptions, imagine that we are talking about how does a kiss feel. Okay, in that sense, David Hume remembered it like the most important empiricist philosopher of the era. Okay, in my opinion, of the modern age. We're going to analyze the first case. Okay, the experience, and experience got a new and a deeper meaning in this schema. Okay, because despite we're not going to throw to the trash can the reasoning and the rational faculty, we are going to get higher and higher the role of the perception, the role of experience and of empirical and sensorial experience. Okay, so this first case we can analyze it through two types of perceptions to perceive the first kiss. The first one are the impression, and the second ones are the ideas. Okay. Remember that the ideas are faint images, are copies, are representations of the impressions. Okay. The impressions could be related with, for example, the emotions, the passions, the feelings, the sensations. Actually, Hume says that we don't have a correct word that in any language, even in English, to express what are the impressions. Okay, in other words, imagine that the impression is the act itself and the passion itself of kissing someone. Okay, of doing anything. Okay, if the feeling itself. Okay. Certain times we don't have the correct and the exact words to describe, for example, the act of kissing someone. Okay, we don't have words in that sense, but we can have ideas. Any idea must have its origin in the impressions. Okay, we cannot have ideas that go further than the impressions. Okay, so imagine that this is real vivid. This is like a scale of force and vivacity, and obviously the impressions have more force and vivacity when the ideas has less force and vivacity. Okay, imagine that these relation, impressions and ideas are the same thing, but this is like less vivid and this is more vivid. We don't have words and we are like breathless to kiss somebody, and we have like the memory, we have the idea that we can have of kissing somebody. Okay, the imagination, the faculty of imagination obviously is in here. Okay, now David Hume, as we said during the class, is not denying the reason, or that in his thought could be understood as well as understanding. Okay, reason or understanding for Hume are the same things. Okay, now the ideas could be understood through two kind of types. Okay, the relation of ideas that are demonstrative. Okay, for example, David Hume is not saying that 2 plus 2 equal to 4 is not necessary. Okay, it could be only that way, and we have the evidence in there. Okay, and any mathematical theorem has that characteristic, okay? David Hume is not saying that we don't have this capacity, okay? But in the other hand, we have the matters of fact, okay? That matters of fact could be, for example, if today is a sunny day or tomorrow is a rainy day, are contingent, okay? Remember a little bit Leibniz, okay, with the truth of reasoning and the truth of fact. It seems to be like the same thing in a certain way, but it's a bit different. We're going to see why. These matters of fact, as we are saying, are contingent. They could be or not be. Today is a sunny day, tomorrow is a rainy day, okay? The one that I love to say, today I love you, tomorrow I'm not quite sure about that, you know? And then David Hume is going to be really concerned in this type of idea, the matter of fact, that today is a sunny day and tomorrow the sun must rise up, okay? Because obviously every day the sun rises, okay? David Hume is starting to ask, okay, why do the things behave as they do? For example, it seems that everything has a cause and an effect, okay? For example, the one that we said in class, like, for example, if you are on a story, you are going to have appellation in your exam. For example, this, I don't know how to say it in English, but this thing, when I put my, I don't know what this thing is, but imagine that this falls, okay? Now we can say that the cause is gravity, okay? Or for example, if I start to writing here, but I don't have my marker there, we could say that the cause is my marker and the effect is the line, for example, okay? Everything in the world seems to have a cause and an effect. For example, if you see your boyfriend, your girlfriend with another person, obviously you're going to have an effect, okay, on you. So David Hume started to say, okay, if there is a cause-effect relation, a causality, cause-effect is equal to, say, causality. If there is a causality, a cause-effect relation, then we can infer or we can know always the effect. If we know the causes, we can know the effects, right? Now, that seems to be necessary. That seems to be like in this side. But we are talking about this. It's not necessary that today is a sunny day. Perhaps it's a rainy day. So for David Hume, he's going to say that we don't have a cause-effect relation, or in other words, he is denying the cause-effect relation. Why? Because in some proper words, according to his philosophy, we don't have a direct impression of a cause-effect relation of causality, okay? In other words, remember that every experience must begin in the impressions. If we, if any idea or any thought that is not beginning with the impressions, that idea or thought is not valid, okay? In other words, the world is as much as my experience is, okay, as my impressions are, okay? Beyond my impressions, beyond my experience, there is nothing. Therefore, we don't have an experience of causality. But you can say, oh, but yes, we have. This is gravity, man. I experience gravity. David Hume is going to say no. You have impressions, okay? And the same example that I did in class. You have an impression, and an impression, an impression, an impression, an impression of this falling, and you're going to see that this ended in the ground. David Hume is going to say, well, yes, you got all the impressions, but that doesn't mean that one impression is the cause of the following one, okay? That could be seen, for example, in the bells example that we did at the first of the partial, that it's not necessary that one sound bell was the cause of another one. I deceive some of you. Think about the billiards, okay? Think about that you are hitting one ball and that ball is going to hit another one and another one, okay? In other words, that seems to be like a causality, that this is causing this and this has the effect, but David Hume will say no. You have the impression of this ball hitting this ball and this ball hitting this ball, but the causality, the cause-effect relation, is something that you are in some way to say it. You are giving, okay. Remember Spinoza and remember Leibniz. Causality, cause-effect, was something that emerged from the world, and we are not saying that. We are, as much as we are saying, the thing that we can say is that cause-effect relation is something that we are giving to the world, not that is something from the world itself. There is a quite significant difference with David Hume and the other philosophers. It's really different to say that God is the cause of everything, instead of saying that we have impression that give us the illusion that God is causing everything. This is like the deepest attack to rationalism, because with this attack of causality, actually David Hume is denying any metaphysical idea, any metaphysical foundation. David Hume, instead of saying that God, the substance, and causality exist, David Hume is going to say no, we don't have a direct impression of God. We don't have a direct impression of substance, and even we don't have a direct impression of a causality, as we already saw. Then, how can we experience the world if causality is something that it seems that we are giving to the world? That it seems to be an illusion, or something that we can infer, but that is not something from the world, okay? David Hume that is going to say the custom. The way we experience the world is through the custom, okay? For example, the sun rises, okay? We can infer and we hope that the sun is going to rise tomorrow because the sun was rising of all this time and all these years, and in other words, it seems that we can have we have the hope that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. But if we follow this consistent schema, that doesn't mean that in a necessary way the sun is going to rise tomorrow, okay? Perhaps it doesn't, it won't, okay? Remember the example that I gave you of my ex and me walking through the street, and that she hit a rock, but she realized that the rock wasn't a rock, that the rock was shut. Why did she think that was a rock? Because perhaps she hit 1,000 times a rock, and she could infer by custom how a rock is, its consistency, its solidity, its texture, I don't know. And in the 1001, she could infer that was a rock, but she didn't realize that rock was a shed, okay? So in other words, we don't have a certainty of anything under this custom schema. We have to live among and through the contingent life, okay? Life is contingent, but we can infer certain things because the reality, our perception of the world itself seems to be a bit uniform, okay? Because the world has a uniform way. We can infer that we have experienced it by so many years that the sun is going to rise tomorrow, okay? A last thing. You can say, well, why, for example, what about the idea of God? What about the idea of a unicorn, of any imagination that we could have, for example, a dragon, a unicorn, as I said, or God? Those ideas are compound ideas that had its origin in the impression, but that doesn't mean in a necessary way that that idea is valid. In other words, God is the summary. For example, what do you think when you think about God? A noble, a benevolence, a merciful person. Those things, you can feel it. You can feel when something, when as a merciful person, you can feel benevolence, you can feel love. If you summarize all that characteristics, you are getting the idea of God, for example, as well as, for example, you can have the impression of a bird, you can have the impression of, I don't know, the tail and anything, so many things that can give you the final idea of a mythological creature, for example. In other words, we can have idea that not necessarily have the original impression, but because those ideas are compound ideas, okay? So as you can see, David Hume rocks because he is proposing a new philosophy that doesn't have a metaphysical foundation in God, in the substance, in the causality of the world. And now, actually, in a poetical way, we need and we must live with the custom through the shadows of contingency. Yes, but David Hume that would say that the way it is. Okay, that's the reason he's known as a skeptical philosopher. But it's not a bad skepticism. Okay, I would say that actually that's the real skepticism, to that about those metaphysical ideas and to propose a philosophy without any further explanation that actually that seems to be something that we got that we grasp from ourselves, but that doesn't mean that these ideas fully explain the world. Okay, but that's good enough. And I wanted to be well, I'm sorry for the large of this video, but it was necessary. Okay, well, any question, please ask me. Bye.